Mariusz Pudzianowski spent a year in prison before dominating Strongman like no one in history. He didn't just lift weights, he shattered all limits of what humans thought possible. This is Mariusz Pudzianowski, the Destroyer, Białowieża, Poland, 1977. A small town 80 kilometers southwest of Warsaw. The cold grip of communism still holds the country. Resources are scarce. Opportunity is limited. Life is hard. Mariusz Pudzianowski enters the world, an ordinary child born into extraordinary times. Poland stands on the edge of transformation, caught between Soviet control and the first tremors of change. Economic hardship is a daily reality. Standing in line for basic necessities is routine. His father, Wojciech, a weightlifter himself, returns home from work at the local factory each day with calloused hands and a straight spine. In a time when many men bend under pressure, Wojciech stands tall. He brings home not just bread, but something far more valuable, a mindset. Nothing is given, he tells young Mariusz. Everything must be earned through work. The lesson takes root early. By age 13, while other boys play with toys, Mariusz already handles real weight. His first training equipment? Homemade concrete weights crafted by his father, crude implements mixed and molded in their small yard. No sophisticated gym, no trainers, no supplements, just iron determination and concrete weights. In the family's modest home, a small room becomes a sanctuary of strength. Wooden beams reinforce the floor to support the weights. The walls, adorned not with posters of pop stars, but with images of strength icons. Bill Kazmaier, Jan Paul Sigmarsson, Jeff Capes, men who represent what's possible through sheer power and will. As a teenager, Mariusz shows promise, but not the physical attributes that would predict his future dominance. Not exceptionally tall, not naturally massive, but there is something different about him. An intensity that burns hotter than in other young men. A willingness to push beyond normal limits. This intensity isn't always channeled positively. The late 1980s and early 1990s bring tumultuous change to Poland. The fall of communism opens doors, but also creates chaos. For many young men, including Mariusz, the streets become a proving ground. Fights, trouble. A raw expression of the aggression that would later find more constructive outlets. By 17, this path leads to a critical moment. A prison cell, sentenced to 4.5 years for assault, reduced to 1.5 years on appeal. Cold concrete walls replace the warmth of home, freedom replaced by confinement. For many young men, this would be the end of potential, a life derailed. But for Mariusz, the cell becomes another training ground, another test of will. He creates a regimen from nothing, push-ups, sit-ups, any movement possible in the confined space. His body becomes both the weight and the machine. When he emerges from confinement, he is different, focused, disciplined. The raw aggression now harnessed toward clear goals. Never again, he vows, will his future be determined by concrete walls not of his choosing. He turns to formal martial arts training, Kyokushin karate. The discipline suits his temperament. Full contact, uncompromising, it is a perfect outlet for controlled aggression. He excels quickly, winning fights and gaining rank. The karate ring becomes his first taste of legitimate competition, of channeling power into achievement. But it's not enough. His father's influence pulls him toward pure strength sports. The family legacy calls. And in Poland, a new opportunity emerges. Strongman competitions gaining popularity, broadcast on television, creating new national heroes. In 1999, Mariusz enters his first serious strongman contest, the Poland Cup. Raw, inexperienced, but fearless. He doesn't win, but shows flashes of potential that catch the eye of promoters and veteran competitors alike. Something in his movement, his attack on the implements, his refusal to acknowledge limitation. Within months, his training intensifies, the martial arts background providing an unusual foundation, explosive power, pain tolerance, and mental toughness that traditional strength athletes often lack. His approach isn't methodical or scientific, it's primal, instinctive, driven by a hunger that cannot be taught. By 2000, he qualifies for his first World's Strongest Man competition in South Africa. On the international stage, he is an unknown, a curiosity. the Polish rookie facing established champions. He finishes fourth. Not just respectable, remarkable. A statement that something new has arrived in the strength world. Someone who doesn't follow the traditional path. Someone shaped by different forces. The prison cell, the concrete weights, the martial arts discipline, the post-communist hunger, all of it forging something the strongman world has never seen before. Mariusz Pudzianowski returns to Poland not as a champion, but as a man who now knows exactly what he's after. And nothing will stand in his way. What made Mariusz different wasn't just his background, but his physical makeup. At 6 feet 1 inch and eventually 320 pounds in competition shape, he wasn't the largest strongman. Contemporaries like Magnus Samuelsson and Zydrunas Savickas towered over him. But what Pudzianowski lacked in sheer size, he compensated for with a combination of attributes that created the perfect strongman storm. His 5 World's Strongest Man titles came through methods so extreme, other champions called them impossible. First was his explosive power, unusual in the strongman world. Most competitors built their strength gradually, methodically. Pudzianowski moved like a sprinter. His fast-twitch muscle fibers, developed through years of martial arts training, gave him acceleration that left opponents flat-footed. Second was his conditioning. While other strongmen focused purely on strength, often neglecting cardiovascular fitness, Mariusz maintained the stamina of a combat athlete. In events requiring endurance, farmers' walks, Hercules holds, loading races, he would maintain intensity while others faded. Third was his tolerance for discomfort. Not just physical pain, but the deep burn of maximum exertion. Where others would shut down as lactic acid flooded their muscles, Pudzianowski had conditioned himself to push through barriers that stopped normal men. After his 4th place finish at World's Strongest Man 2000, Mariusz returned to Poland with a single focus: total domination. His training evolved from instinctive to intentional, though never losing its raw intensity. His daily regimen became legendary among Polish strength athletes. Up at 5 a.m., 2 hours of morning cardio, running, swimming, or cycling. Breakfast, 3 hours of strength training, rest. Another 3 hours of event-specific training in the afternoon. Martial arts practice in the evening. Every day, without exception, without excuse. His diet matched his training in extremity. 6,000 to 7,000 calories daily, but with unusual precision for the era. Lean proteins, specific carbohydrate timing, supplementation focused on recovery. At a time when many strongmen simply ate as much as possible, Mariusz approached nutrition as another competitive advantage. Recovery methods were equally intense. Ice baths before they became standard practice. Contrast therapy. Sports massage that left therapists exhausted. Nothing gentle, nothing easy. His body treated as both precious instrument and hardened tool. 2002 brought his breakthrough. World's Strongest Man in Malaysia. Events perfectly suited to his explosive power and conditioning advantage in the tropical heat. As larger competitors wilted in the humidity, Pudzianowski thrived. Event after event, his preparation showed. Not just competitive, dominant. When the final points were tallied, there was no doubt. Mariusz Pudzianowski, World's Strongest Man. Poland had its first champion, and the sport had a new force to reckon with. But one title wasn't enough. Not for someone forged in the fires of post-communist Poland. Not for someone who had climbed from a prison cell to the pinnacle of strength sports. One title was proof of ability. Multiple titles would be proof of greatness. 2003, World's Strongest Man in Zambia. Different continent, same result. Pudzianowski, even more prepared, even more dominant. Back-to-back titles. Then came 2004 in the Bahamas, his first setback on the global stage. Vasyl Vyrystyuk of Ukraine takes the title. Mariusz finishes second. For a man accustomed to total victory, silver feels like failure. He returns to Poland not in celebration, but in determination. The training intensifies further. The diet becomes more precise. The recovery methods more extreme. Every aspect of preparation scrutinized. Every weakness identified and attacked. This isn't just training for competition. This is a man at war with the very concept of limitation. 2005, World's Strongest Man in China. Mariusz returns with devastating effect, not just winning, but dominating, reclaiming his throne with a performance that leaves no questions. The title returns to Poland. The dynasty continues. 2006, Iceland. Different location, same story. Fourth title in 5 years. Unprecedented consistency at the highest level. The strongman world now fully recognizes what they're witnessing. Not just a champion, but a once-in-generation phenomenon. The most dominant force the sport has ever seen. 2007, California. The drive continues. 5 titles in 6 years. A competitive record that seems almost impossible. Not just victories, but a psychological dominance over the sport itself. The question is no longer whether Pudzianowski can win, but whether anyone can stop him. What emerges through these years isn't just a champion, but an icon. The physique, massive yet defined, with muscularity unusual in strongman circles. The explosive power, the intensity that radiates through the television screen. The primal scream of effort that becomes his signature. Mariusz Pudzianowski isn't just winning strongman competitions. He's redefining what a strongman can be. And in his home country, he's becoming something more than an athlete. A symbol of Polish strength rising from the ashes of hardship. A national hero whose journey mirrors Poland's own emergence from the shadows of communism to the brightness of new possibility. As Mariusz's competitive achievements grew, so did his profile beyond the strongman platform. In Poland, he became not just an athlete, but a cultural phenomenon. Television shows, magazine covers, advertising campaigns. Wherever strength needed a symbol, Pudzianowski was the natural choice. His face became one of the most recognizable in Eastern Europe, the embodiment of power and success in a nation still hungry for new icons. With fame came financial opportunity, endorsements, appearance fees, business ventures. For a man who grew up in communist scarcity, the sudden wealth presented new challenges. How to maintain hunger when no longer hungry. How to preserve edge when comfort becomes available. Mariusz's solution was characteristic. Turn everything into competition. Business became another arena to dominate. Investments in transportation companies, property development, fitness facilities. The same intensity that built his physique now directed toward building an empire. His personal life contained the same contrasts that defined his athletic career. The ferocious competitor capable of tenderness. The intimidating physical presence who spoke softly away from competition. The disciplined athlete who enjoyed simple pleasures, music, family gatherings, time with close friends who knew the man behind the muscles. Music became a particularly notable outlet. In 2009, he recorded Zdobyć Świat, Conquer the World, a dance track that showcased another side of his personality. Critics were harsh, fans were divided, but for Mariusz, it wasn't about critical acclaim, it was about expression, about showing there was more to him than lifting stones and pulling trucks. Through it all, training remained sacred. No matter how many opportunities arose, how many distractions presented themselves, the iron discipline never wavered. The 5 a.m. alarm, the multiple daily sessions, the methodical nutrition. The foundation that built his success maintained even as that success opened new doors. By 2008, after 5 World's Strongest Man titles, Mariusz stood at a crossroads familiar to all dominant athletes. What happens when you've achieved everything possible in your sport? When there are no more mountains to climb? When the challenge becomes not conquering others, but maintaining your own standards? Most athletes in this position either decline gradually or seek new challenges. In characteristic fashion, Pudzianowski chose the more difficult path, reinvention, a complete transformation that would shock the strength world and test whether his athletic gifts could translate to an entirely different arena. Mixed martial arts, the fastest growing combat sport in the world, a domain where strength alone isn't enough, where technique, timing, and specific skills determine success or failure, where Mariusz would start not as a champion, but as a complete novice. At 32, an age when most fighters are approaching their peak or already declining, Pudzianowski began training specifically for MMA competition. The transition was daunting. Weight reduction from 320 pounds to a more mobile 265. Overhauling training to emphasize flexibility, timing, and technical skills over pure strength. learning to absorb punishment in an entirely new way. In December 2009, he made his professional debut against professional boxer Marcin Najman. The bout lasted just 43 seconds, Pudzianowski overwhelming his opponent with raw power and aggression, winning by knockout. An auspicious beginning, but experienced observers noted the technical limitations, the raw potential, but also the considerable development still needed. The strongman world watched with mixed reactions, some supportive of his courage in starting anew, others critical of abandoning the sport he had dominated. But for Mariusz, this wasn't abandonment, it was evolution. The next challenge for a man who had never been defined by a single pursuit. His MMA career would prove more challenging than his strongman dominance, victories against lesser opponents, defeats when facing more technically proficient fighters, the limitations of beginning a combat career in his 30s becoming apparent against lifelong martial artists. But even in this new arena, where championships proved elusive, Pudzianowski showcased the qualities that had made him exceptional: the work ethic, the willingness to learn, the refusal to quit when easier paths were available. Each fight showing incremental improvements, each training camp adding new dimensions to his game. What emerged wasn't the most skilled MMA fighter, but perhaps the most determined, a man who had nothing left to prove to the world, yet continued to challenge himself in the most demanding ways possible. A champion who chose difficulty over comfort, growth over security. Today, Mariusz Pudzianowski's legacy extends far beyond his 5 World's Strongest Man titles or his MMA career. His impact manifests across multiple dimensions: athletic, cultural, and personal. Athletically, he redefined strongman competition. Before Pudzianowski, the prototype successful strongman was massive, often carrying significant body fat along with muscle. Mariusz brought a new aesthetic: powerful but defined, massive but mobile, strong but conditioned. Future generations of competitors would adopt this model, recognizing that pure size without athletic ability was no longer enough at the highest level. His training methods, once considered extreme, became more mainstream: multiple daily sessions, enhanced recovery protocols, cardiovascular conditioning as a strength asset. What seemed like madness in the early 2000s became standard procedure for elite strength athletes a decade later. Culturally, especially in Poland and Eastern Europe, he became a symbol of post-communist possibility, a man who rose from humble beginnings through sheer will and work ethic. In a region where opportunity had been limited for generations, Pudzianowski represented what was now possible through talent and relentless effort. His business success reinforced this narrative: the athlete who translated physical achievement into financial security, who built not just a body, but an enterprise, who secured his future beyond his competitive years. On a personal level, Mariusz's journey from troubled youth to disciplined champion offered a template for transformation. The story wasn't just about lifting weights, but about lifting oneself, about the possibility of redirecting aggression and energy toward constructive ends, about the power of focus and discipline to literally reshape not just a physique, but a life. Looking at the totality of his impact, what stands out isn't just what Mariusz Pudzianowski accomplished, but how he accomplished it. Not through exceptional genetic gifts, though certainly he had natural talents. Not through advantages of wealth or opportunity. His early years offered neither, but through the most basic and yet most difficult of human qualities: the willingness to work harder, longer, and with more focus than anyone else. In that sense, his story transcends sport. It speaks to something more fundamental about human potential, about our capacity to transform ourselves through consistent effort, about the power of treating limitation not as a boundary, but as a challenge. 5 World's Strongest Man titles, an MMA career launched when most athletes would be retiring, business success beyond the platform. But perhaps his greatest achievement is less tangible, showing that strength, real strength, begins not in the body, but in the mind, in the decisions made when no one is watching, in the discipline maintained when motivation fades, in the daily choices that, accumulated over years, build not just champions but extraordinary lives. The boy with concrete weights in communist Poland, the troubled youth in a prison cell, the martial artist finding discipline, the strongman discovering dominance, the businessman building security, the fighter facing new challenges, all versions of the same man, Mariusz Pudzianowski, the destroyer who built something lasting, from homemade concrete weights to the world stage, from a prison cell to international acclaim, from communist limitations to capitalist success. Mariusz Pudzianowski's journey embodies transformation in its purest form. 5 world's strongest man titles may stand as the statistical measure of his dominance, but numbers alone cannot capture the impact of a life lived at maximum intensity, of potential fully expressed, of strength that goes beyond the physical into the realm of character and will. In Poland, they call him Dominator. In the strength world, simply Pudzian. But perhaps the most fitting title is the simplest, an example of what's possible when limitation is rejected, when excuses are abandoned, when work becomes not a burden but a path to freedom. The destroyer who built a legacy, Mariusz Pudzianowski.